Why is every Siege content creator such a Debbie Downer? Why are they all so negative? Why can't we stop cooking Ubisoft?
Why am I still getting hate?
It's because they deserve it. I hate them. I'm kidding. It's okay, guys. I'll leave the multi-billion-dollar company alone. And I was going to talk about one thing, but this game that I played of some Rainbow Six Siege Standard turned out to be so fun that I decided to make a video out of it instead. Believe it or not, a lot of the arguments that I've heard over the years concerning the player experience and the people that you play the game with have been around since the game first came out. People have always complained about bad teammates who don't pay attention to stuff, teammates who don't listen to calls, unaware teammates, yada, yada, yada. And for a while, I prescribed to this notion as well. But eventually, I got over that. I stopped being a little bitch about it, and then I just realized, hey, you know, I can control the things that I can control, and I can't control exactly what my teammates can do, but I can guide them in the right direction. And that mindset is something that I think kind of has to develop over the course of however long it takes. To be a more self-sufficient player is also to ask for help on occasion. And this is an example. Watch my yellow cam, someone? Some people don't like talking in these games when nobody else is talking, but I keep talking. I'm a yapper. I will yap and yap and yap until I get a response out of somebody, and usually that's a good thing, because eventually somebody will start talking, then somebody else will start talking, and then you start to figure out what I'm trying to say here, right? Then people feel more encouraged because somebody else broke the ice for them. So as long as you can do that, then you can actually get a pretty sociable, amicable environment in your games. So this is a roundabout point, and today's video is pretty abstract for this reason. There's not a particularly strong point that I'm gonna focus on in this video, just kind of yammer about general things concerning mood and positivity in the game. I try to keep things positive, even though the situation with the game isn't particularly great. You know why? Because I can't control what Ubisoft does. I can't control the anti-cheat being the way it is. I can't control the cheater situation being the way it is. So I do some things to get around the problem. I play Standard. As far as I can tell, Standard is relatively cheater-free right now. You know, if I realize that somebody else is cheating, then I don't put a lot of mental stock into the situation. When this guy whiffs really hard, I don't roast him for it.
Op 4 eliminated all friendlies.
Wow. I need to use a secondary after that. I need to use a secondary.
It's okay, man.
It's okay.
It's all right. I whiff too. It's okay.
No, it's just low-key funny.
It's kind of funny. Did I peek that terribly and then set my Dokkaebi up there to lose that gunfight? Yeah, I mean, there's several things that I could have done for that peek to not get slammed like a moron. But I didn't do that. I got slammed like a moron, and that guy was in a gunfight that he shouldn't have had to take. So that's a little bit of both, right? I can take responsibility for messing up the way that I took that engagement because I was being lazy, and the Dokkaebi can hit aim lab whenever they want, right? Two things can be true at the same time. And so that leads to me talking about the situation with Ubisoft again. Two things can be true at the same time. I can point out that the game is in a pretty serious slump right now, and I can also say I still like the game overall. If I didn't want the game to succeed, if I didn't want the game to improve, then I wouldn't be talking about it the way I did. And like I said in yesterday's video, I know a decent amount of the people at Ubisoft. So that being said, I understand that they can take it, right? They're adults. We're all in the business of trying to make our audiences happy. They understand that. It's the game. It's social media. It's how things go. That's sort of just how these things go. You take them as you get them. If the game was completely unplayable to a point where I wouldn't be able to queue up in a game with some random strangers and yuck it up a little bit, then I think we would be talking differently. I think we'd be having a much more, you know, perhaps sinister conversation, a much more angry conversation. But that's not what I'm having. I understand the rules of the game. I understand that negativity and negativity bias is a really, really big component of the gaming YouTube space right now. And if I don't lean into that to a certain extent, I'm just not going to make any money, man. That's just how these things go. Now, if it's not to say that I can't occasionally make some money doing something else or putting a different kind of spin on it. In fact, that's exactly what I would like to do. And I understand why people, when they see me, you know, upload 6 videos in a row that have a negative bias or a negative slant, then it can cause confusion because I say one thing and then I end up doing something else, or at least it feels that way. But the truth of the matter is, Rainbow Six Siege is a game with, you know, some significant issues, and that doesn't mean that I hate it. That doesn't mean that I don't think that those issues can't be solved. It doesn't mean that those issues can't be fixed. And I do believe that Rainbow Six Siege will eventually fix these problems, because I have no particularly good reason to think that they couldn't. Just like I didn't have any reason to think that I couldn't fix my own problems with my own Rainbow Six Siege play. I don't really know how much people, you know, take stock of my personal play in terms of how I navigate my engagements in my gameplay and the actual tactics involved. But I do notice a tiny bit of difference, at least in terms of the effectiveness nowadays, than I used to be at. And I can see that. I can feel more confident about my engagements. I feel more confident about what I'm doing, about what I'm communicating to my teammates.
What?
You got this, man. You got this. You got this. I believe in you. Rotate, rotate, rotate. Pre-fire his ass. He's gonna impact you. Yeah! And I think playing a game of standard, getting away from the ranked, sweaty sort of stuff, or even the TM stuff that I normally do, playing the game with people that aren't necessarily, you know, super invested in the outcome, but are just playing it because they have fun enjoying the game, is a very different kind of experience than playing in a sweaty environment. Not that I hate playing in a sweaty environment, but what I think is really interesting is how much better at times these guys seem to be with their mental than a lot of the sweaty competitive guys. A lot of the sweaty competitive guys, sometimes they get into this kind of mental pitfall of just over-analyzing and dissecting every single aspect about the play, and they go off of the whole, well, I'm right, so I'm allowed to be an asshole. I'm allowed to be an insufferable person. Another example was this interaction. I'm not really sure what the Fuse is looking at. You know, the Fuse is kind of crouch walking around, you know, da-da-dee, da-da-dum, just kind of, you know, crouch walking it up, but who cares, right? All I have to do is have information in the right place at the right time, and he makes a really important play here. He gets a really important flank pick.
I got cams.
Yeah, Fuse. Nice.
Thank you, baby girl.
Now, how many esports sweats, right? If they were in this lobby, right? Of course, they would never be in this lobby, right? They wouldn't associate with the with the bronzes of society. Ugh, how gross. But seriously, how many esports sweats would have just either not commed for that guy, anything, or they would have, you know, made like a really snappy comm and then be like, yo, what? Like, come on, you know, or like roast the guy if he lost the gunfight. And that doesn't help, right? I don't understand this mentality. I don't understand how that kind of, that toxic bias is going to help people keep playing the game and encourage them to feel, you know, enthusiastic about the esports scene and encourage them to feel enthusiastic about the professional circuit. It's really frustrating when I see people, you know, lean into the esports jock kind of culture rather than try to provide people avenues of success. And that's what Rainbow Six is all about, making things more efficient for yourself. The negative malaise doesn't just have an effect on YouTube, it seems to be pervasive throughout the entire game as a whole. And yet, these guys that I'm playing with, they're yucking it up, they're having a great time, they're shooting the ish, and they don't seem to care if the game, you know, has all the problems that it has. They're fine. Iron sights on that thing?
Iron sights for everything.
All right. There is such a night and day difference between the average people that you run into in this game versus the other one, just in terms of the vibe and the energy that it's putting out. Again, I'm not saying that competitive isn't fun and that I think that, you know, competitive sweats are ruining the game or this and that. I've played the game competitively. Well, not competitively, I should say. I played the game, you know, semi-seriously, right? Like ranked sweatyly for a significant period of time. And I don't really like the whole, you know, competitive culture, and especially tac shooters, competitive shooters nowadays, where we have this kind of weird caste system that like separates People who play the game seriously versus people who kind of, just ish around on it. And the sword cuts both ways. I don't think that the e-jocks are, particularly healthy for the scene when they malign and ridicule people for playing casually. And I don't think that the casual, populist mob is much easier to get along with either. The guys that are clearly jealous of the fact that people are, pretty good at the game, and instead of, trying to satisfy that urge to improve themselves, they just, they make it other people's problem. That's also, toxic and really annoying. And to an extent, I was in that camp, sort of. When I first started playing the game, 2016, 2017-ish, I really had a deep insecurity about my own particular gameplay, and at times I didn't really feel like putting it out there for people to see. And now it's a little bit different. I can see that. I can feel more confident about my engagements. I feel more confident about what I'm doing, about what I'm communicating to my teammates. I don't, I'm not as scared as I used to be going into engagements, and I don't get overwhelmed by the information quite as much as I used to. I'll drop a hatch and aim where I need to aim, maybe get a couple of picks. Now, if I was playing in Champ Elo, would that play have worked? Probably not, but I'm not playing in Champ Elo. I'm playing in Standard, and I'm just going to do what I think works in the situation, take a risk. It's better to take a path that may work than not make a decision at all and then get nowhere. That's kind of a George Patton saying. I forget the exact phrasing of the quote, but it's something along those lines that applies to gaming, life, business, lots of things in general. Whenever I would usually do these Yap sessions, I'd either upload T-Hunt footage or I would upload recently the map training stuff for TDM. And it's not to say that I, will stop doing that because, sometimes I be hitting some shots in TDM and I think that looks good. But at the same time, there was also a component of, wanting really badly to not show the bad parts of my gameplay. And every content creator kind of does this to a certain extent. They want to show you the highlight reel, not the, the parts where they're getting their butt kicked. But now I don't particularly care, because one of the things that I learned about life in general through playing this game for as long as I did, and also playing competitive shooters for as long as I did, when you treat something like this as a sport for as long as you have, you get to a point, hopefully, eventually you get to a point where you maintain a much more healthy relationship with your mistakes. And when you make a mistake, it doesn't feel as crushing as it used to be. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people don't want to play the game at the level that, they would probably like to is because they don't feel confident about it, and they feel like they're going to make a mistake and then they'll get ridiculed for it, or they'll ridicule themselves, or they'll feel bad, personally about it. And this is always super, it's like a huge bummer whenever I can't convince somebody to, try out Counter-Strike or another game like this and play with me, because I'll be there to help them out. I would love to be there to coach them and kind of help them get along the way. But the biggest thing that I've noticed a lot of the time when it comes to getting into these kinds of games is people will be way too hard on themselves and then say, well, I don't want to work a 9 to 5 as a game. I already have a hard enough time. And a lot of the time, those conversations more or less sort of revolve around, I don't want to be dog shit at this and invest a lot of time in it because that's embarrassing. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay to say, like, I'm dog shit at this thing, or I'm not good at this thing, and continue playing it. I don't know how many people are still playing, casual, quick match, or standard in this game. There goes my creaky chair, fat ass. I don't know how many people are still playing this game, not at a competitive point where they feel like, yeah, I'm not good at the game. And that's okay. I would venture to say that that is the overwhelming majority of the people who play Rainbow Six Siege. I think the overwhelming majority of people who play the game are people who aren't as plugged into the content scene, who are consuming every single little piece of content that's going on about, the negativity and all the key talking points about the cheaters and this and that, right? Ubisoft is, their content model is bad. What's going on with the monetization? The overwhelming majority of the population that is playing the game right now are people like the people that were in this standard game with me that I recorded today. And I think that's true of a lot of different population sets. I think that's true about politics as well. Something that that happens quite a bit in terms of political commentary is that, especially on Twitter, people have this idea that because of their, algorithmic echo chamber, they feel like everybody else is also in the echo chamber. And that's not true. The vast majority of people, who pay attention to politics, those people make up about a sliver of the general population. The general population, the average voter, to use American politics as an example with our election season coming up, the average voter doesn't start consuming content about politics until the election cycle, about 3 months, 4 months away. So, we might be in the background like yapping it up and talking about, oh, well, last month they passed this bill and then they had this speech and, we think there's some really good, metrics here, blah, blah. Most people don't give a crap about any of that. For instance, I make a mistake here. I don't know why I opened this hatch, just kind of a matter of habit for roamers. In this case, it's not a good idea because I can throw a util through it. Oopsie daisies. I'm not going to let that affect, my mental of the match. I'm just going to play it out and then adjust accordingly because I can't control the fact that I made that mistake in the middle of the match. When I am being negative about Rainbow Six Siege, when I am, talking about Rainbow Six Siege from a place of criticism, I'm not doing so because I want the game to fail. That is a very common point of a lot of the, I call them gamer populists. I call it the gamer populist movement because it scarily reflects a lot of phenomenon that is reflected in populism sometimes. I think. I could just be a crazy person and reading into it way too much. But I do not subscribe to the gamer populist notion of like every single time the multi-million-dollar company does something that's unfavorable or unsavory, it means the entire industry is about to collapse or, or this and that. I don't think that it's the end of the world for Rainbow Six Siege. I believe that Rainbow Six Siege has some significant issues, and I think that if you're trying to treat a patient, let's say they have high blood pressure, you don't, tell them, oh, they're never going to fix it. Oh, this is your own fault, right? You just assess the situation and say, okay, you got to cut this out of your diet. You got to do a little bit more activity with this. You got to work your heart a little bit more, right? You prescribe solutions and then you do your best to follow up on the solutions. And then every day you might not follow up on the solution. In the case of Ubisoft, it is a massive company with so many different moving parts. And one YouTuber isn't going to fix it overnight. I sure do love some Rainbow Six Siege standard gameplay.
Wait.
Some of the best
Hey,
I've seen in a long time.
Agreeable update.
This guy deserves all the guidance.
Shut the fuck up.
The glue of Rainbow Six Siege, the glue of the Siege community is the guy going in the fucking post-game lobby. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Deuces.